You know what's better than having the face of your franchise figured out in year one of a rebuild? Having one on both sides of the ball. And Dan Quinn's former boss and a former co-worker of Adam Peters, our current general manager, says Washington should go all in for the third all-time leading sack getter of the Las Vegas Raiders, and even mentions a cornerback as well. Let's talk about it. This is Rambling About Washington.
Look, I keep trumpeting this, and I think the Raiders fans are going to be agitated with me, but I know Dan Quinn. I know Dan Quinn loves legit pass rushers. I'm talking game-breaking pass rushers. You know where I'm going with this. To ever see a guy like Max Crosby come in there, pushing that to continue to build because, you know, they have a little bit of age on that pass rushing side too. I think that would be an ideal fit.
It's the sixth season of Max Crosby, and he is already the number 3 sack getter in the history of the Las Vegas Raiders organization. This is a guy who last year, 14 and a half sacks. The year before, 12 and a half, 8, 7, and he came out the gates in 2019 with a 10-sack season, 58 and a half sacks over his first 5.5 years of his career. And while he would like to be a Raider for life, the floodgates have been opening since the Raiders look like they are so far from being competitive. Their quarterback room is a nightmare, and one of them just got hurt. Antonio Pierce, while he may be a culture guy, I'm not sure how long he's going to last as an NFL head coach because he does a lot of head-scratching shit. Max Crosby cannot just sit around and watch this organization be dumpster juice for his whole career. He's only 27 years old. As accomplished and revered as he is as a pass rusher, he's still only 27 years old. He still has prime pass rush years ahead of him. Thomas Dimitroff, the former Atlanta Falcons general manager from 2008 to 2020. It's over 12 years as the general manager of the Falcons, and he spent time as a scout and executive for the Patriots with Adam Peters, a connection to our GM, a connection to our head coach. He was on good old Grant and Danny on 106.7 The Fan, the afternoon drive show of the network, and he made their eyebrows, ears, and eyes perk up when he said, I think Dan Quinn should go all in for Max Crosby. He said, I worked with Adam and I was Dan Quinn's boss, and I know how Dan Quinn is about having an elite pass rusher. He said, I think Washington should go all in on Max Crosby. See if he's available, attack. And I know most fans' immediate reaction to hearing that would be, oh my God, he's going to cost so much. You know what costs a lot in this world? Valuable things. You get what you pay for most of the time. For Max Crosby, you pay whatever the price is. Let's go to fairy tale land. Let's say Max Crosby is actually being shopped right now. You know, the Detroits of the world, maybe the Dallases of the world would call him. Maybe not Dallas, because they would have to actually pay something, and that's not what they do. Why would the hottest team in the league, about to be sitting on $120 million in cap space at the end of this season, who need pass rushers and cornerbacks, why would we not be the team to be aggressive enough to pull it off? You figure out your quarterback in year one of the rebuild. Go get the quarterback type player of the defense. Max Crosby comes here. The cornerback situation looks better. The linebacker and the safety position looks better because you have a premier, elite, blue chip player at edge. Love what Dante Fowler is doing. Love what Dorrance Armstrong is doing. You know who they are not? They are not Max Crosby, who even in a down Raiders season already has 6.5 sacks in the first half of the season. Well on his way to another 12 to 15 sack season because that's what he does. And he's disgruntled right now. You heard him last week when he said, I just want to win, whether that's here, whether that's somewhere else. I don't want to rebuild. I just want to win. And when everybody throws these names around, we play Madden musical chairs with players around the trade deadline. Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Max Crosby. That normally doesn't mean anything to me, but this is different. Thomas Dimitroff was a GM for 13 years in this league. He was Dan Quinn's boss, our head coach. He worked with Adam Peters, our GM. He knows both guys, and he's on Washington radio saying Washington should trade for Max Crosby. He also said Washington should call Cleveland and try to get Denzel Ward. He thinks Washington should go big fish hunting to capitalize on newfound success. You've arrived earlier than scheduled. You're beating the shit out of bad football teams, and you've proved through 7 weeks this is sustainable, and this looks like you are building it the right way. Adam Peters has come in and struck gold on so many acquisitions. Austin Eckler, Zach Ertz, Noah Brown, Tyler Biotish, Nick Allegretti, Dante Fowler Jr., Bobby Wagner, Dorrance Armstrong, the list goes on and on and on. And we never were going to fill every hole in Adam Peters' first offseason, but where would Washington's ceiling go in year one? This move wouldn't be a let's go all in for 2024. Acquiring Max Crosby would be we're going all in, period. We want a franchise-altering player that's available at the deadline. We're pushing our cards in. So what is the cost going to be? I think a first is definitely has to be included because you're talking about a blue chipper. You're talking about a Ring of Fame player for the Raiders, a player they do not want to trade by any means necessary. But I'm thinking about it. Washington's on pace to win 10 plus games this year. They're on pace to pick in the mid 20s, the early to mid 20s in the draft. Y'all think there's a Max Crosby? I know there's a good edge class this year. Y'all think there's a Max Crosby sitting there in the 20s? Y'all think so? I'm not sure. You get what you paid for. Players of Max Crosby's ilk are not available at the deadline. So that's a special situation. Sign us the fuck up for that if he becomes available. Don't be pussy, scared money don't make no money, and Washington has an abundance of that. It's not normal for year one rebuild teams to fuck around and make the playoffs and then turn around and have a boatload of salary cap sitting there after the season. So we could afford Max Crosby's contract. We could take a look at, we don't even have to take a look at his deal. Let him get what he's supposed to be paid and let him get the fuck after it. You like Dorrance Armstrong, you like Dante Fowler Jr. and Frankie Louvu in the roles that they play now. Put a blue chip, easily best player on the field type player like Max Crosby on that defense. You're going to just be able to let those other guys run loose, create chaos, cause havoc, because so much attention has to be given to a guy like Max Crosby. Offensive coordinators have a headache scheming around this guy every week. And that would be a dream come true. Like I said, we're going into dreamland, and I don't even usually like to go here unless it's brought up by someone substantial. And I think Thomas Dimitroff saying this holds weight because he's worked for both guys. He's worked with both guys. He was Dan Quinn's boss, and he worked side by side Adam Peters in the early dynasty days of the New England Patriots. So when I hear a 12-year GM that our coach worked for say, I know how Dan is with edge rushers, it would be a match made in heaven. I'm going to listen to that. That's interesting. That definitely got my eyebrows raised. And if that didn't do it for you, he also said Washington should call Cleveland about Denzel Ward. I seen a clip earlier of Denzel Ward guarding T. Higgins. That's what a bona fide number one cornerback looks like. We're still waiting to see what the development of Emmanuel Forbes looks like. An ascending player like Noah Igbenogany, trying to get everything we can out of him, and probably the final year of Benjamin St. Juste here in DC. But adding a guy like Denzel Ward, that's big fish hunting. And then there's going to be fans that say, no, that's what Dan Snyder would do. Negative. Dan Snyder was out here signing aging, past their prime veterans and paying them top of the market contracts. That is not what Daniel Snyder wanted to do. While he always wanted us in on big fish, the big fish that he would reel in would be older guys for the most part. You can't compare any movement the team has now to any of the predecessors here in DC. If you're not good enough, you're gone. Adam Peters already traded away Jahan Dotson and cut Jamin Davis. Did he give a fuck that they were first round picks? Absolutely not. You're either buy into the culture, you're good enough to get out there on the field, or you're gone. I don't care who drafted you. I don't care what position you stood your ground for when Ron was here. Washington has holes on this roster, and despite the holes, they've got off to a 5-2 start and are on pace to win over 10 games this year. They're on pace to win over 10 games this year. It would not be going all in for right now. It would be going all in general to add a franchise-altering player like Max Crosby, bro. I'm going to read it to you again just in case you don't understand how good this guy is. He already has 6.5 sacks this year. His first year in the league, 10 sacks. 7 sacks his second year. 8 sacks his third year. Then his last 2 years, 12.5 and 14.5. The man has 27 sacks in his last 2 years. As much as we like Montez Sweat and Chase Young, neither of those guys were double-digit sack guys when they were in Washington. This is a walking 11 to 15 sack guy yearly. And Dan Quinn is better than what they got up there in Vegas. Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr., he would fit like a glove into what we're building, and you can see the upward trajectory of this franchise. Max Crosby would run to us if we were to offer a trade for them. So I think it makes sense for the team. Let me know what you think in the comments. I also seen ML Football, even though I don't really know if that's a reliable source or not. They mentioned Harold Landry of the Tennessee Titans being someone that Washington would be interested in as well. I'm very interested if he's available. He's a younger guy too. He's a younger guy as well. He averages like 7.5 to 8 sacks a season. Another big fish for Washington. But if you're going to shoot your shot at the biggest fish, work your way down. Let them hang up on the phone with you and let them say, not gonna fucking happen, but thank you for calling. You always check in on the situation, and I keep harping back to Adam Peters telling us in that one press conference, we want to be involved in these things. Even if we don't necessarily want to pull the trigger on a trade, we want to be on the phone, we want to be in the mix, and we want to be a relevant part of the conversation. I believe Adam Peters when he said that, and so far, you've heard Washington has been picking up the phone and they've been calling around, because a 5-2 start is probably better than anyone in the organization imagined at this point. And adding something right now could even take this team to another level now and for the foreseeable future after this season. Max Crosby would be a dream acquisition. Thomas Dimitroff, thank you for throwing the oop. Let's shoot our shot and let them tell us no, because the worst they could do is say no, right? Either that or rebut us and up the offer. Let's make a deal, Vegas. Max Crosby to DC? Probably not, but we could dream about it. Thank you, Thomas Dimitroff, for getting the conversation started, and thank you to Grant and Danny for posting it out for everybody to see. That's all I got for right now. Hail to the Washington Commanders. Until next time, Commander Rio, out.